What's good, Chaotic Nation? It is your boy Chaos here, and welcome back to the Premier Draft League Season 7 doubles. This is going to be my draft analysis for the Detroit Red Wingulls, as I will be breaking down my team and kind of explaining my thought process as to why I drafted certain things or why I was looking at getting particular Pokemon to add to my team at this point in time in the draft. It's a little bit more in depth than the preseason draft analysis that we've done for the whole league, because I'm only talking about my 12 Pokemon instead of talking about almost 100 entries. So let's jump into it with our first overall pick, which was a Whimsicott. Whimsicott was a very wanted Pokemon for me. I wanted to have a Prankster option immediately in the game, so getting Whimsicott was number one on my list. I was kind of afraid that this thing would go to someone else, because it has some good utility and other stats. And just, you know, Fairy is always a good typing to have. I wanted to get it. I mean, Grimmsnarl was something I was looking at for this team, but ultimately Grimmsnarl was kind of a Pokemon that I didn't have great success with last season, so I decided against it. And I feel like Whimsicott provides more options for the team, particularly in things like Tailwind that Grimmsnarl does not get access to. And I wanted to add it to the team, mostly because of that, and also because I haven't used this Pokemon before. I thought it looked really well. It's used a lot in VGC, so I'm like, this can't be a bad option. And so I grabbed it and put it on the team. Up next, we got Venusaur. So this actually was a Dragapult to begin with. I traded immediately after the draft was over for Venusaur because I kind of shifted my idea later in the draft. I wanted Dragapult mostly because no one else could have had it, but it is a good, really fast offensive option that can be run physically or specially. A powerful Pokemon that has access to some really nice moves. However, Dragapult was probably the thing that I could get rid of on my team and still have a nice unit, so I decided to swap it out instead of Whimsicott for Venusaur in the slot. I kind of shifted the Sun late into the draft, which me shifting my draft plans doesn't tend to go well, but it was something that I needed. I figured I needed something to deal with fairy types. I wanted a sweeper in a grass sweeper in Sun. Venusaur is a really good tanky Pokemon in general, so I don't even have to run it in Sun if I don't want to. But I wanted the ability to have this Pokemon who doesn't really need to have its ability proc to be good. And with the coverage that Venusaur gets and the moves that Venusaur has, it's a really solid Pokemon for any team, regardless of if you're running weather or if you're not running weather. So that was part of my strategy with drafting this thing, is I just wanted to have the coverage that this would allow me, rather than having to rely on other things on my team to kind of carry the offensive pressure that we would have had. Up next, we got Leafeon. So you can kind of see that I talked about that Sun team. I already had a Sun Mon on this team, but Leafeon's goal was not to be used on a Sun team particularly. It kind of was an anti-Sun, anti-weather Pokemon, because Leafeon has the ability to set up a couple different weathers itself. It can run Chlorophyll, so if somebody was, I planned on not getting what I got, so I expected there to be a Premier Sun setter that Leafeon just dealt with coming out every week. In Groudon, in Torkoal. I mean, Torkoal wouldn't have been a great one, but specifically for Groudon, this thing would have worked really well. I thought it was the best counter for Groudon. It also works well against Kyogre, which are two options that I really expected to be grabbed immediately, which didn't go until later in the draft. So Leafeon kind of was a weird pick in the 3 slot for me. I mean, I knew I wanted it as an option to counter these things, and I had already determined that it was going to be on my team, and better take it early than forget about it and not get it later on. Up next, we have, that's not my team. Up next, we have Electivire. Sorry about that. I forgot to I missed a slide, apparently. We got Electivire. So I was thinking about this team and trying to plan for it. I knew that Sleep was going to be an option, so Vital Spirit on Electivire works really well. It's honestly just a good Pokemon in general, has some good stats. So, ended up making on the team. The coverage on Electivire is crazy, and as a powerful electric type, it just does a great deal of damage, only really being weak to ground, which I have plenty of coverage for with my grass types. So, I'm like, this is a great option. I want to get this. It was something that I originally wasn't planning on drafting. I just ended up being on my list later on, and I didn't have a lot of tier 2 slots open. Like, the other tier 2 was the only other tier 2 I had on my list, so I'm like, I can go ahead and grab this thing and throw it on the team because it's going to be useful, and I really didn't want somebody else to get this, so I grabbed Electivire for myself, and that's why it's on the team. Next up is Specimen, my other tier 2. As I said, I don't really have another option for a tier 2 slot that I wanted. I mean, maybe a couple of different ideas could have popped up, but I definitely wanted to get Specimen, mostly because I hadn't used it before. We already saw Incineroar go away, so Intimidate was going to be a thing, so it can counter that with Defiant. I also have a really cool ability in Receiver that could get me an ability of a Fallen Comrade, so making Specimen even better by taking something that would be really good for it and adding it to the team. I know, like, there were some other options I wanted to pair with Specimen, but I want it's a really good Pokemon in general, so I don't really need its options with specifically building for Specimen. And it can kind of be a nice supportive Pokemon, can be a nice offensive, speedy Pokemon that has a good speed stat and a good attack stat that can deal with a lot of things. So I really wanted to grab this thing and throw it on the team. Plus, I'd used it in the past, and I kind of just traded it away. So I wanted Specimen to kind of have a redemption arc, and I feel like it's better in this season than it would have been in any other season. So finally get to use Specimen, and I'm excited to use it. Up next is another trade. So this actually was Dugtrio originally. In my original plan, I did not have a ground type on my team. That was changed with a pick later on that I wasn't expecting. And then I just didn't have a water type. I never drafted a water type or an ice type. Lapras kind of fit the bill as a tier 3. Dugtrio was really the only thing I was willing to part with. I mean, there's a few other things that I thought about filling the slot with, but Lapras kind of fit the bill as a nice water type Pokemon. It's really bulky, which is what I really wanted to find in a water type. Gives me a nice fire water grass core, which I'll have a fire type later on to show you, but I think particularly it's the coverage in ice that's going to be the biggest help for me, because this helps me deal with a lot of the dragons that I didn't have a lot of counters for, especially since I lost Dragapult, and if I didn't trade Dragapult away, I definitely would have been fine with not getting Lapras in this slot. But the kind of getting rid of Dragapult really made me need to get this on my team, just so I had an option for those dragons out there. And Lapras has a lot of coverage too, works well on this team, so I'm really excited to use it again, and hopefully it goes well. Haunter was the next thing up on my team. Now this was another really weird niche that I kind of saw and wanted to grab. Haunter is certainly not that much worse than Gengar, 15 less special attack and 15 less speed, which isn't too bad because it's still like 95 and 100, so really good stats, can run Eviolite. But particularly Haunter is one of those tier 4 mons that I feel like could be a really good option for a team. You know, I didn't have a ghost type, I didn't have a poison type. It's kind of a non-threat option that people will not expect, so throwing Haunter onto a team in a random week could cause some problems for people who didn't prep for it, which is what I'm really excited about Haunter for. Has some really cool niches. You know, I could get cheeky and run and run some very fun Destiny Bond strats or something along those lines. So we'll see what happens with Haunter. I'm excited to use this thing, and honestly, being slightly worse than Gengar is not too bad, especially when I get it at tier 4, so I'll take it, and I'm looking forward to using this thing. I finished up my required mons with a Molga. Now, Molga was originally on my draft plan. There was a really good strategy I had with it that I'm not using anymore because I didn't get the right restricted mon to pair with it, unfortunately. But Emolga I wanted on the team because there really wasn't another tier 4 I thought about. Like Pinsir was on my radar, but that was already taken. but nothing else really struck my fancy as a tier 4 mon that I wanted to grab. So Emolga fit the bill as a nice option as a supportive Pokemon. It can have Nuzzle, so that could be useful in getting paralysis and speed control. So I'm kind of been playing this team off speed control at the moment. That was really what I was building for. That's why Whimsicott's on the team. Leafeon with an ability that boosted speed. Venusaur also helps with that. Specimen being can be a fast option or a slow option depending on how it's built. Lapras is a defensive and slow option. Haunter's pretty fast. So I'm kind of trying to build a fast team to outspeed the metagame, but I also wanted to build things that could inhibit my opponents. And Emolga kind of was a cheeky option that would work if I decided to use it for a week. So I added Emolga to the team, and I'm hoping it goes well as well. Up next is the first major pick that wasn't expected by me. I got Gmax Charizard. At this point in the draft, I was really needing a fire type. My really only other considerations for Gmax Pokemon was Gmax Flapple. And I already had, at this point, 2 grass types. I ended up getting Venusaur over a third one, so I didn't really want a 4th grass type on my team. But Charizard kind of just fits because I needed the coverage and flying. I needed a fire type. I didn't have any good fire options in the lower tiers, which is what I was going to need to draft. So using my Gmax slot to get Charizard kind of worked out because I don't know. I like the Mon, obviously. It's my favorite Pokemon. And I thought it could be fun to use. I know it does have some very, very big weaknesses, but I'm hoping that we can play around that with the team and use Charizard effectively. My only problem really is its Gmax move is the fire slot, so it gets rid of setting up Sun, which is a bit of a problem for this team. If I'm planning on using Sun with some of my other Pokemon like Venusaur and Leafeon. So that was my biggest concern with it and why I was kind of not wanting to draft it, but I think it works out. It's probably the best option of Gmax for my team, and I'm excited to see what we use it for this season. Speaking of the big throw in my plan was Groudon here. I did not expect to be drafting Groudon. I actually built this team kind of to prep against Groudon. Everything I had up until this point was a Groudon counter, and just getting Groudon on my team, which was not my initial plan at all, kind of threw me for a loop. I got to the last 4 picks of my draft and really didn't know what to do. I had 2 different plans. One involved using Groudon and Gmax Charizard. One involved going a different route and picking some more like defensive kind of Pokemon. But I figured since the Sun was here, I had the ability. I already had a team drafted for Sun. Why not go ahead and full send it and grab Groudon, which I think is going to be helpful for my team in general. Another reason why I got rid of Dugtrio is because I have Groudon. I don't really need 2 ground types, especially when I'm going to just bring Groudon instead of Dugtrio. So getting Groudon was a nice grab. Really didn't expect it, and we'll see what happens with it as we play through this season. I don't know if it's going to be an every week staple, but it's definitely a nice option as a sunsetter, and I'm really happy about that. Kind of full sending into the Sun team. Helolis is one of the better mons that isn't a grass or a fire type that goes in the Sun. And that's kind of why I want it. It's really, again, I'm looking for speed control. A fast Pokemon like Helolis just works out for me. It kind of fit a little bit of a strategy that I had in my mind that I hadn't got to use yet. So I kind of got it on the team as fast as possible, and I'm hoping it goes well because I haven't used this thing, and we'll see what happens with it. And my final slot is Espeon. This is another thing I wasn't really expecting to grab, but I do like Espeon for a few niches, especially its ability Magic Bounce and Synchronize. It could be a good option to deal with things that are like Stally. So if they try to Toxic us, we can just give that right back to them. If they try to do Gigantamax and lower our stats, we can just bounce that stat back to the Pokemon, which is why I kind of like Espeon here as a niche. It's a good anti-Gmax Pokemon, and really that's going to be some of my struggles. I feel like this season is dealing with those Gmax Pokemon that are out there, and so Espeon really helps out with that. Plus, It can be a nice defensive option because it has Morning Sun and then the Sun that's really nice, as well as good coverage and for an evolution, which is kind of crazy. And you know, one evolution wasn't enough for the team, so I had to get a second one. Definitely not what I had anticipated drafting, but it ends up working really well for my team, and hopefully it decides to be well for this season. Well, that is kind of my team. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this breakdown. There's a lot of things in the draft that did not go well, and I'm always surprised every season with PDL that the things that you would expect to go and be drafted do not get drafted till the end of the draft. So it's really kind of hard to do a draft with the people that are playing in this league, because sometimes you just don't get what you expect. Like you don't expect random things to be drafted early on. You don't expect Kyogre and Groudon to go late in the game. You don't expect everyone to pick their people to pick their restricted in their final slot. Like you expect the things that you want to build your team around to be the first things that go rather than the things that go at the end, and that makes for a very difficult build. Makes for a very difficult draft season. Part of the reason I struggled so much in the final picks were because there were strategies that weren't fully developed for other coaches that I was kind of trying to play against. I built this draft more on counter picking instead of building my team the way I wanted it. I already got everything I wanted early on, so counter picking kind of ended up being the thing that didn't work for me. But I think we built a solid team. I'm excited to use it in Season 7. Hopefully, me finally getting to use a Sun team will go well for me, because I had one in Season 4 and we didn't really finish that season. But I'm excited to finally have another Sun team again, and we'll see what happens. Again, I don't know what the strategies will be for the week. I have to plan those out. And speaking of that, another update for this season particularly is I've done team builders in the past where I've gone through why I'm building every Pokemon, what the breakdowns are, and everything like that. We're not doing that this season. I'm going to be talking about it in the battle as we're going, rather than just kind of showcasing my entire plan to coaches who I might have to battle again later, who are going to be the people who are watching those videos. I'd rather not just divulge all my secrets if I don't have to, but definitely we'll talk about some plays if they show up in the match, because they're already going to be shown at that point in time. So that'll be that. I am expecting this to be uploaded on Sundays, so I'll probably end up shifting the shiny reactions to Saturday slots, and this will be my Sunday series. Keep in mind that we have a couple of weeks until the season begins. Today should be the 23rd. The first week's video should be out on August 7th. So check back for that, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the comments, rooting me on, and seeing what the battles are going to unfold like. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed. Go check out the rest of the coaches that we will be fighting this season, and hopefully things go well for us and we can pull off another win that we haven't had in a couple seasons, because Sword and Shield does not like me. I've determined it's Sword and Shield, not doubles or singles, but Sword and Shield itself that just doesn't like me. So hopefully things will go well this time around. We'll see what happens. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this draft analysis, and I will see you next time. So until then, my name is Chaos. I'm signing off. Stay safe, and as always, burn it up.